Alright, Math 2, looking at some periodic functions specifically, looking at difference between period, midline, and amplitude. So as we check this out, I just want to make sure we understand that the period's talking about the horizontal length. It's how long for one cycle to happen. Okay, so we're going to look at these first three and really try to determine how long they happen. On this first one on the left, I think you guys can see that it starts to repeat itself. After this point, it starts to repeat itself. So that's from -1. There's 2 units for it to complete that one cycle. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to start at the top. You could have started at the bottom, and it would have still ended up being 2 units as you go from 0 to 2. So what you're going to lose, you're going to look and try to find yourself a good place to see where it starts. Now, in this middle example here, it's harder to see with the example, but I'm going to start right here and see if I can draw where it repeats itself. So it looks like one cycle is right in here, and my best estimate on the x-axis is going to be from -2 to 5. Alright. On this third example over here, it's pretty clear to see that it's from 0 to 6, so my period would be from 0 to 6. Now we're going to look at amplitude. In order to talk about amplitude, I need to understand where the midline is. And the midline is going to be the average of the min and the max values. So as you can see, I've taken this first one, I want to determine where the maximum is and the minimums. And then I just find the average of those. So my midline is going to be at 1/2. And of course I can even draw that in. Now, that helps me to find the amplitude. The amplitude is the height above the midline, so as you can see, that's exactly 1/2 above and below the midline, so my amplitude is 1/2. Same process for everything. If the maximum value is 10 and the minimum value is -10, then the average of those is 0. So the midline becomes 0. And then I look for how tall above and below I am. And since it's 10 above and 10 below, my amplitude is 10. Last example over here, the max value was 3. The min values were all 0. So the average of that is 1.5. So my midline is right there at 1.5. And you can see that the amplitude is exactly 1.5 above and 1.5 below. Now, that all leads us into our discussion about what our sine and cosine graphs look like. So here's a quick look at our sine graph and our cosine graph. We can do period, amplitude, and midline for all of these. Now in Math 2, we only need to know the degrees. We don't need to know the radians. But you can hopefully see where the period is. That is 360 degrees. So if I start here, go up and down, down and up, and that repeats itself. Okay. Now again, as a little bonus, the top measurement is in radians, which you'll do with Math 3. The bottom's in degrees, and that's what you need to know for this math is degrees. The max is at 1. The min is at -1, so the midline is going to be at 0. And that helps me to determine that the amplitude is also a 1. Now the thing to remember about the sine graph is that it starts at 0. Now starts is really the wrong word. It doesn't really start here, but generally speaking that's where most people will start their graphs, at 0. Cosine graph works the same way. Except as you can see this time it doesn't start at 0, it starts up here at 1. Alright, your homework is on the page. Your homework is page 851, 3, 4, 5, 13 through 19, and 26